Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to interrupt the conversation. It sounds so wonderful to have all the chatting going on in here. It is 1 o'clock now. I would like to invite the student reporters from each group. We have one student in each group assigned to the report back. Please join us up here on stage and we'll just gather. We're going to take about 10 minutes or so to gather our thoughts and prepare for our feedback, so the rest of you can stretch your legs, take a little break, and we'll call you back when we're all ready. thought we flanked.
Because there's nobody here, so it's amazing.
And good afternoon. Welcome back to the Delaware Arts Lab. I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch and enjoyed their discussions. And now it's time to share, because that's what we do. We're sharing here, right? My name is Pam Manacchio. I am the Director of Community Engagement at the Grand Opera House in Wilmington. It is my pleasure to be a member of the Delaware Arts Alliance and a part of the planning team today. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us and help us make this pilot program a wonderful success. Your participation is fabulous. So as you all know, we had 6 breakout groups talking about 3 different generations. Up here we have 6 students from DSU who were diligently taking notes during those conversations, and they're going to be reporting back to everyone their findings. We're going to share and bounce ideas back and forth, and it is our honor to share the stage with Secretary of State Jeffrey Bullock. Thank you and welcome to the Delaware Arts Alliance today.
I thought you might confuse me as being the 7th student from Delaware. Yeah. Probably wishful thinking on my part.
I am going to put the pressure on Ms. Faj to start. Faj right here was part of group 5, and your discussion was on the millennials, younger generation, so let's hear what they had to say.
Hi, y'all. So we talked about how previous generations had effects on millennials, and one example is in music, and I know when y'all listening to the radio, like y'all hear old versions of songs, like being Roommate, right? Okay. And we said how technology is being used now, like old books are being made into movies, and then some old movies are being remade with the new technology. So for also for millennials, we said it was a change of culture, value, and how money has like a overall influence on how everything is done, like capitalism, change stuff, and pop culture, and how artists got an influence on people, like rappers and stuff, and how they market to younger generations. And the question was like, who's going to be an icon from our generation? Because I know previous generations had Michael Jackson, and I know now we got like Beyonce and stuff, and if she can make like a big impact. And how media can introduce us to new art forms and ideas. Like I know Instagram, everybody got Instagram, so it's like I could go to her Instagram and see what she's doing, and hers and his and stuff, and get ideas from them. And we talked about how parents, family, and schools have an influence on how you feel about the arts. Like I know in school, you had to take an art class, and they required you to play a music instrument, and it had an effect on you. So, anybody else?
So let me ask you, when you hear these remakes of these songs, you call them older songs, my songs maybe, what does that kind of communicate to you? What do you get out of that?
Sorry. So the question was like, is there new talent out? So it's like, are we making our own stuff? Are we just like redoing it? Or like, can we create our own? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But it's
like, are we original enough to make our own instead of just copying stuff from other people? Like I know when I'm in the car with my mom, she's like, what you know about that? And I'm like, what you know about that? But it's like, because it's the same kind of music, the same beats and stuff. So it's like crossing over, because I understand what she listened to when she was younger, and then she understands what I'm listening to.
So it's a new generation putting their own sort of spin, their own identity, putting their own identity to, older music, in this case. Does that translate like into other forms of art though?
Yeah, like I said in like movies, like I know it's like they just came out with a new Godzilla, and I know like it's the older version. Wait.
Yeah, no.
You see?
I'm with you on this. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And, Y'all know, like, The Giver just came out. Like, I read it when I was in elementary school, and then, like, my nephew's like, what's The Giver? So I gotta tell him, like, it was a book about this. So it's like people might not want to read it. They might just want to go to the movies and see it.
Good.
So what we are hearing is the crossover of generations, using the same art, but reinventing it for the next generation. I think that's a great outlook and a way for generations to connect with each other by having that common thread sometimes. You know, the same song just being replayed in a different way, or the same movie, you just get
Absolutely.
to see it and experience it again.
Yeah, well, I was at, I was talking to a few people here earlier about an exhibit that just started up at the Grand, actually having to do with art from, mostly from Italy, that had been stolen somewhere along the line, you know, over the centuries, and had been recovered by this group of people in Italy that this is what they do for a living. They recover stolen art. So it's a police agency in Italy. And going through that exhibit last night, there were some pieces of jewelry from the 1st and 2nd century. And it had been all cleaned up, obviously, and polished up and looked, you know, almost new. And you would have thought you could have walked into a jewelry store, you know, down the street and bought the exact same thing. And because jewelers today have copied the art of the 1st and 2nd century, right? So that's a pretty broad gap. You're only talking about a couple generations, but same thing holds true.
Let's sticking with the millennial generation. We'll have Victoria report on Group 6 discussion.
We basically started off our conversation talking about what is art, and we came to the conclusion that art is freedom of expression with different perspectives of life. And our second question was, how did we get younger people to go to the programs, such as going to operas and things like that? And we went back to social media and advertisement, because it's a bunch of it's basically free advertisement for social media. And we came to the conclusion, like you guys, it was brought up that people don't want you actually filming what's going on in front of you, but it was better for us, as the younger people that were in the group, we were saying that if we seen the flaws, because we can empathize and sympathize with what's going on behind the scenes beforehand, before the opera, before the play or whatever, just basically feel like they're real people in front of us and not somebody that's perfect.
So, you know, it's in the performing arts, again, it's sort of like the music example, going to the theater and seeing shows that are, you know, maybe somewhat dated, somewhat older, you know, maybe from, well, for you guys it's not that long ago, but even like, you know, like The Lion King, which has now become the most popular, I guess, theater production ever on Broadway. But that started, The Lion King probably started, you were probably very young. I don't know how long it's been on stage, but quite a few years now. So do shows like that resonate with you for their being old or for their being current, or which, you know, how do you relate to them? Does that make sense?
Not really,
Yeah.
but I think
So how do you, when you go to a show like that, how do you approach it as something that's like contemporary for you, or something that's like for old people like me?
we're saying also with the plays and stuff, it's always changing because it's a spur of the moment thing, kind of, even though they have like a line. Things that happen in front of you because it's live, so you're never going to expect the same thing twice. That makes sense. So
that the kind of the spontaneous aspect
yeah,
of it
that's the best
is
part.
what you find to be the best part. Okay, that's good. That's great.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to the Generation X group. Chris Williams.
Okay, well, pretty much what we was talking about was how art is relevant in the generation between individuals between the ages of 30 and 85. And one of the questions that we hit was how is art relevant? Is art pretty much relevant to this generation? And one of our group members was saying how he believes, and I also believe this as well. The interest is there between individuals between 30 and 55, but it's more so, the flexibility of people nowadays. We have, we always have, other priorities that we have to do. Like, I know as far as for myself, I'm busy trying to, pay bills. I have to, worry about schoolwork, just school in general, and that pretty much takes up a lot of my time, throughout the year. And that's one reason as to why, some individuals really, do not have time, just to go out and go to art museums or, just do, anything art related, in their time. And one thing we also hit was how to make art more relevant. One thing was discounts. Discounts, with art museums and whatnot, because of the just the price of living itself is pretty high, as you all know, and also some maybe some innovative fundraisers as well. And one thing that I believe that we was talking about that pretty much is like what's the word I'm going to use? Pretty much what art is competing with is like competing, with sports during the weekends. We have a lot of people that travel to go to football games, basketball games, this, that, and the third. And art is pretty much competing with that, because how do we keep people at home, just to go to an art museum, spend money, and they look at art that way. We're also talking about partnerships with companies to communicate the importance of art in the community, pretty much closer relationships with employers. And another thing that one of our group members was talking about, I believe he said it was in Milford, they have like a child care center, which allows the children to pretty much make costumes and this, that, and there, and they perform plays as well. And he was saying that's beneficial to the parents and children as well, because for the parents it makes them more affordable to see shows. Of course, they're going to be seeing, I believe, children seeing their shows, and also allows the children to appreciate, what they are doing as well, as far as with the costumes and stuff like that. And also, what we was talking about, we need to get the younger generation more involved when it comes to art, meaning like them becoming board members as well. Like we believe like the employer has to recognize young people that are on the board, which could allow for the employee, to have a better position when it comes, to that sort of thing. And it's not also about bringing in the information about art to the employees. It's also about bringing it into the workplace as well. Yes.
So you're the Xers, right? Is that your generation? Is that what we're talking about?
Generation X, yeah.
Which one?
That's what we're talking about, Generation X.
The Xers, right. So they have a kind of more utilitarian view of art in some ways. It has a practical aspect to it. You talked about the value in the child care environment to educate, and also the the practical aspects of funding the arts and advocating for the arts, like you all are doing today. And so, how do you think we're doing? This is a critique of my generation, from your perspective right now. How are we doing in terms of that, of promoting the arts and giving them the profile that they need to have to be successful?
I believe it's going good, but there's always room for improvement. There's also just other things that art is competing. Like I said, they're competing against other things that that are grabbing other people's attention. So there's some people that enjoy art, but it's like I said, there's always competition. So you're doing a good job, but like I said, there's always room for improvement.
Right. So you mentioned the affordability piece of it, and it is expensive. For a lot of families, I think even going to movies these days is pretty expensive proposition. All in. How do you because the arts tend to be an area where one of the reasons it's expensive is because it costs a lot of money to make a movie. It costs a lot of money to produce a song. It costs a lot of money for a theatrical performance or even an art exhibit to put that on. mean, how do we address the cost, and is it worth addressing the cost, I guess, of continuing some of these things, or is it best left to like the free market, to kind of figure out what the right balance is? I mean, compare it to like, a typical, like a pro football team is worth probably, I don't know how much money, a couple $1 billion right now. A lot of money. A lot of money. For, I love pro football, so I'm not being critical of that, by the way. But, compared to, and people go to a football game, they pay $100, $150 a ticket to do that and do it, I've done it. But seems to be a much more profitable way of providing entertainment than the arts.
Right.
The more traditional arts, it's called. So how do we balance that out? I mean, how do you see that kind of, what role should the government or should the community play in trying to, promote the arts, to make it to make them economically viable, to make it affordable? Yeah, absolutely.
With my group, we discussed like the generational gap between like Generation X and Generation Y. But we also found out that in art there are pretty much lessons and themes that are relevant to everybody today. So one way what we discussed was with music. For example, like they have classical music. Not everybody in my generation is going to want to go to a theater to go watch classical music being performed, or an orchestra, or even a play for that matter. But if you want to think of it in our generation, if you find a way for the classical music to tie into what our culture is used to, then we're going to be more accepting of the art form. We're going to want to go see it. For example, like we were talking in the group, there are musicians that do covers of popular music today, using the same instruments and the same techniques that you would use in an orchestra. For example, I know a guy that I follow on Instagram. He plays the violin, but on that violin, you can tell that he's been practicing. You can tell he's got that background, but he ties it in with music that is known to us. Like, for example, he did a Jay-Z cover of Heart Not Life. Now, if you see that on a music video for the Generation X, they're not going to want to listen to that. But if you play it in an instrument, they're probably going to be more accepting of it. That's just how I feel.
That's a good point. I want to get back to the kind of transcendency stuff, especially when we get to the boomers. But back to the issue about affordability and a lot of the work of advocacy groups, such as the sponsors of today's event, has been around money. Because, again, as I said, it's very expensive to run a museum of art or to put on a production at the Grand or something like that. And it's a very real problem. And for policymakers like myself, who have to kind of figure out how to convince people to support the arts, you need to have not just advocacy, not just people showing up at budget hearings and stuff like that saying we need more money, but you need people like artists and people who patronize the arts to make kind of a fuss about it, right? And to put some of their wallet where their mouth is. And so I think the challenge is, again, sort of how we go about that and how your generation kind of participates in that at an early age. And somebody mentioned here about participating on boards and the sort of governance structure in arts organizations, which I think is a terrific idea. But beyond that, how do you feel about your role as, kind of advocates, as lobbyists? And anybody can answer this. It doesn't, I'm not picking on you.
I feel like people pay for what they want to pay for. I know me personally, I will pay for some food. I can't say that. I said I'll pay for some food, but I can't say I'll pay as much for clothes or something like that, but I will pay for food. So it's all about the person and what they want in their life. So if they really want to experience art, they'll go and pay a good penny for some art. If they want to experience a game, a football game, they're going to pay money for that game. It's all about the person inside
You're kind of a free market person. You're kind of a let it happen kind of woman.
I mean, it's both, but it's at the end of the day, it's really on the person at hand. I
Okay.
feel like.
Fair enough.
Hey, I'm from Philly, so one thing
That
that
explains a lot.
one thing that they do is if you want, like, I know to make it affordable, like if you want welfare, if you could go to a museum and show me like your EBT card, and it'd be cheaper. So it's like it's making it affordable for lower income people, and I know like now a lot of people going to museums and stuff because it's cheaper. And then City Hall, they be having like galleries, so maybe Delaware could start doing that too.
To provide more sort of, and you can applaud for that, that's fine. To provide more sort of free access to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
okay,
sir.
fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'm hearing.
Free
the
is not
arts-
free, by the way, we all understand that, right? Free does not mean free. Free in this case means that, you know, and I'm not being critical of it, that taxpayers somehow, some way, you know, pay for that. But I understand your good point.
I'd like to say, comment on people will pay for what they want to go see, whether that's sports or arts, performing arts or visual, but some people, they need the opportunity to be exposed to that art to discover whether it's something that they like and will enjoy and come back to. So how do we get them interested in that first, exposed to it and interested in it in the first place to make sure that they become, you know, fans of it later on?
Right.
And my thought is at the early ages in education, but you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. She was saying you have to start from when they're young to kind of build it up to when they go from elementary school to middle school to high school. You have to expose them to the arts, because the more you expose them to it, the more they're going to want to see it. It's going to be a part of their life, essentially. When I grew up, like, we always went to like museums with my family and with school, like for school field trips. Even now in college, we still go on field trips. We'll go to like the Art Museum in Philadelphia or the one in DC. Like, it's almost it's already a part of me. So it's just like when you teach it at a young age and then they grow up knowing that, it's like second nature to them. They become like, I don't know, in love with art, essentially. Like, it's a part of your life. So that's how I would say it would be a better way to getting people to come out to art galleries or museums or shows, is exposing them at a young age.
Go ahead.
Let's have Devon to report back on his group. You're the Boomer group, right?
Yes, ma'am. Not to like go off of what he said, but I can't fully agree with that statement, only because I wasn't raised in the exact same way as him. I didn't have the opportunity to take art classes when I was going through school. I didn't go to art museums. I didn't do the things that inspired me to this day to be able to be the artist that I am now. I inspired my own self, and I was able to find that through my own ways of growing up. So.
And how did that happen?
Through the own values that I was brought up, that I was taught from my parents, and from my own upbringing as a person, I was able to take my own inspiration from the TV that I watched, from the things that I was shown in my own community, to be the person that I am now. I'm not saying that it's not a actual way of happening for a person to grow up to like things, but it's not always guaranteed that that person is always going to turn out that way. With that being said, for the boomers, we rationalize basically that that's a general phenomenon that reoccurs for every generation, that they had to find their own niche, or they had to find their own inspiration to be special. So whether it be us creating something that was already created before in a different way is ours. So two of the topics that we spoke about was what would it take for the new generation to go out to these live shows and to these art galleries to build more of a connection, so when they come up to like college or to high school, whether or not if they want to stick with that type of art or that type of program that they've been doing ever since they've been young. And we came together and said that people need to find their own inspiration to be drawn out within them. So us as a generation now, our generations need to be able to connect with our younger youth. With that being said, not necessarily is always going to connect to them, but you're giving them the chance to see it. Right. And another topic that we talked about was who is literally responsible for making these connections with getting the children out to find these inspirations of different types of arts. Initially, I agree fully with my group that we as a community have to take back to these children and get them out there to go to these art galleries and to these live performances and shows so they can build a better rapport with how to get their own inspiration, or how they need to find their own way of who they are. And from the answer that we also said that we as a community, we have to basically be able to shine the light on the art galleries that we have and the shows that we particularly are doing for these people. We can't not necessarily be, I'm trying to think the right word, I'm sorry. We can't think that everybody is going to like what we show out there to them, but showing it is the first step. Thank you.
Okay, I have two things I want to bring up with you. First of all, the first one is you mentioned, and it's been a couple people have said similar things about where you go to see art, oversimplified. And right now you go to a theater or you go to an art gallery primarily. And then we talked about a little about maybe offering up, different venues that are maybe more accessible to people, maybe people are more comfortable with, right? Because art galleries, no offense, Ryan, are a little intimidating to some people, right? Because they're a little, they're very formal environments, let's just put it that way. So are we off track in sort of continuing to promote these big buildings which are beautiful and have great stuff in them, but maybe aren't attractive to a large segment of the population?
I wouldn't say that you will be off track, but thinking in different ways of how to present these art galleries, of whether or not to have them outside, to have them in a venue that's going to attract the attention of that community in a different way, because we don't always want to be inside of a closed, inside of a closed space.
Right. So it's kind of a mix of things.
Yes.
So the other thing I want to go back to, and again, it's something that a couple people have sort of touched on, and that's what I call the transcendency of art, across time and generations. And you guys have all spoken about it as if it is what the older generation passes on to the younger generation, which I think is a very interesting perspective, and not one that I would have thought you would have been a little broader in your perspective on that, because my view of art very much works the other way. And my kids freak out that I listen to their radio stations. They just think it is the funniest thing in the world that I listen to their radio stations, and that I listen to rap music, and that I don't know any of the names of any of the artists and don't really care to, because it's not what I'm really listening for. I'm listening to the words mostly, and because it communicates something to me, right? I mean, music to me is, especially in this day and age, is very political, and I'm a political person, so you'd expect me to listen for that reason, right? And I learn a lot about what's going on. I learn a lot, 54-year-old Secretary of State of Delaware, learn a lot, when I listen to this stuff. And so, I mean, what role, aren't you guys trying to communicate, the other way? I mean, you're trying to communicate with your peers, I understand, but aren't you trying to communicate, to other generations as well, which would, by definition, be older than you, because there aren't any yet younger than you, or there may be a little younger than you, but they're too young probably to carry yet.
I mean, depending on that artist and how they're trying to perceive their own message through their own music, we're able to get it because we're of the same age group, we're of the same time period as them, so we understand a little bit more to them. But at the same time, is whether I wouldn't say it's a choice in the matter, but it basically it's a choice of whether or not you're going to want to listen to this type of artist or this type of music, whether or not if you can relate to it. Can you relate to the things of what that artist is speaking about? Can you relate to the message that they're portraying in that video, or what appeals to you, basically?
Okay, good answer.
Kalia, would you like to add?
I also have boomers too, and we talked about how the arts are relevant to boomers, and we talked about it not necessarily being about a generation, but like more of a demographic. And the boomers usually are the ones that give to these organizations. They're usually the ones that are supporting the most. And we were talking about how we can find ways for the new generation to support. And Chris was talking about how when it starts when you're young, like you should be exposed to the arts at a young age. Because I feel as though, like my father, like I made him come to every single one of my recitals, even though he was like, why am I here? But I made him come because I feel like he should have been exposed. If he was exposed to it when I was exposed, I feel like he would be more engaged to what was going on. We talked about diversity as well and a struggle to come up to the generation's technology. Like, it's not necessarily that our like we feel as, well, I keep saying we, like I'm a boomer, but we felt as though everything was new and that everything shouldn't have to come up to what technology has to, but we should still adapt to the new technologies of today. And we were talking about how to approach the perspective of how the new generation sees things as to how, rather than to how the boomers saw things, like how the boomers might have looked at newspapers as like when they were growing up, while our generation, we could just go on an iPad and look at a magazine. And so, yeah, that's,
So, all right, so you're kind of making a similar point to what I was talking about earlier about different ways, and you said it as well, about, what you relate to and how you relate to things, which is changing, right? And, the newspaper, I still like to read a newspaper in the morning. I read 2 newspapers or 3 newspapers every morning, and they are real live newspapers that you turn the pages on. My kids, and you get your hands a little bit dirty and the whole 9 yards, right? And my kids, I assume they have read the newspaper before, but it would be a shock for me to walk downstairs and for them to be reading, the newspaper. And the same translates, I think, in how you consume art. Right? I mean, you guys do it, you just do it differently, right? And not that people my age can't relate to those forms, but I think it was in your group over here, you guys were having a little talk about going from press releases to figuring out radio to eventually figuring out Facebook, and which I still haven't figured out, and I figure something else is going to come along fairly soon, so I can just skip right over that. But what does it say for our ability to communicate between generations? If you have those kind of gulfs, kind of voids, and an inability to relate to how we communicate, then how can we communicate art between one another? How do you bridge that gap, I guess is what I'm asking. You made your dad go to all your recitals, which was one way of doing it, but you can't make everybody do that.
We were talking about ways to bridge the gap and how we can get the youth involved, and that's how we were talking about how it should be started at a young age, because I feel like when they're exposed to it young, that's when they have that desire to go out and go to the museums and see things face to face, right, and see it face to face. Because I know that the Alvinelli Dance Company came here and performed, and I saw it, like I see it online, but I saw it in person. I was like, oh my gosh, like what is this? Oh my gosh, this is everything. And so I feel like when you have that face-to-face experience, that's what I just think our generation needs more, that face-to-face, to experience it, to appreciate it more, if that makes sense.
And I think that's a great observation. I think the challenge maybe your generation has is you're moving much more quickly than any previous administration, any previous, didn't figure out what's on my mind, any previous generation. And your kids probably even more so. but there is something to sitting down in a dark, quiet place and watching someone perform in front of you that is just very personal and intimate and just different than watching it on an iPad, right? It's just different. And same thing with music and the same thing with going to the art museum. There's just, when you have that original painting in front of you and you're looking at what that artist was looking at and understanding what that artist was feeling, you can't get that on a video. You can't get that on your iPad.
You were talking about how you were like a sports fan.
What's that?
You were talking about how like you were a sports fan. Like, I watched the Eagles on TV, but if I was there, I would be like,
It's a different experience.
Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
like-
It's a great,
like, I
it's,
can't
it's a
even
great,
express it.
great
Right.
analogy. It's a great analogy. Yeah, it's very different. So, very good. Good.
If there's anybody from the audience who'd like to make a comment, ask a question from one of the students up here, please help yourselves come on up to the front. The microphone is live. I'm going to see a hand back there. This one right
Not
here.
messing around.
You can come up on stage.
So I have a question. Do you think that we should teach more improv in traditional music schools? Because I was just thinking, it was actually the other day, I'm a cello player, by the way, and I was just with a group from like Albany, New York, and they were just like a rock band. And basically they have like a completely different style of how they play. With classical music, a lot of it's just premeditated. You go on stage and you show your work, basically, as if like you were giving a public speech. And these people, they play on the spot. So I'm going to this guy's house and it's like, all right, what you got? Essentially, like, here's like a beat, here's like a rhythm. What do you got? And it was, they've never heard a cello. They don't know what it's like to like improv on a cello or anything like that. And they were just blown away because they're thinking, oh, this kid's gonna play like Mozart or something like that, some premeditated stuff. But no. But I think that improv is like this thing that we just don't teach, and a lot of people are like scared to do it, just because like I guess they're not comfortable with it or anything like that. But if you can blend different genres together, like say if you go and you're a classical musician and you want to do EDM and you want to do like an orchestra plus like an EDM concert, and it's like Ultra Music Festival that just sells out for like the hotels at in Miami are sold out for like 5 years in advance for Ultra Music Festival. And that's like electronic music. So you can't say that like that's like we're talking about like how do we generate an audience. You just have to look. You just have to look, like, where are people going? Like, where are people, like, how can you relate to how can you, like, tailor your art to, like, what you want and plus, like, what everybody else wants? Like, kind of, like, work with people and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, if you can, like, blend your genre, if you can blend your art to, like, what the now is, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you can just, like, make that concoction just, like, I don't know, blend it together, I feel like you can like cross genres and cross different paths, cross to different people. Like, I wouldn't mind going to a studio and just making a beat on the cello, or I wouldn't mind going to a jazz festival and like, playing jazz on my cello or something like that. But it's like, oh, like I play cello and I just have to do classical music or something like that, and I'm going to be a classical musician for the rest of my life. It's like, no, I don't want to be on that path. I have a path. I can take any path. I have one life. So what can we do to cross different genres, cross, different backgrounds and different, values, different morals, all that kind of stuff, and just bring it into one? Like, how can people communicate like that?
I, for one, think that's a genius idea for music specifically, for the art form of music, in order to keep the interest and keep, like we talk about crossing over and blending, and what the new generation, where their interest is, may not be in traditional classical music, but they can still play those instruments and learn better improv, learn better jazz, learn better rock rhythms and the theories and chord progressions behind all of that, and then blend their interests. And then somebody trained that way would be more likely to attend the orchestra concert than not. So I think that would be great, musically speaking.
Yeah.
And I am classically trained and could not pick up my instrument to jam with a band for my life, but
Yeah,
I would love to.
exactly.
So there's an idea for any music teachers in the room.
My group actually talked about it and like something like that. And our generation today, we are all over the place. Like, we want to do everything, especially because of social media. Like, there's so many opportunities for us. So I feel like with the improv thing, people are scared to have fun. So they're more focused on just doing what's in front of you and making it perfect. But we're losing ourselves within it, so it's more of us having fun within it. So I definitely agree with having more improv. Like, I feel like as younger teachers, that's when kids are most creative, and they need to promote having fun within the arts, because that's your time. Like, even in English, because I believe that's an art as well.
Yeah. Making it fun, making it spontaneous, like you said earlier, and making it maybe interactive and engaging. So like I was speaking about music, but maybe the art world can, instead of having just an exhibit, invite the generation, you kids, to come in and create art at a reception instead of just looking at it.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. But to touch on his question, I do believe that schools should teach improv classes, because when you're doing improv, you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're expressing yourself through your music, and it's not necessarily always going to be what they want to hear, but it's going to be what you want to tell them. Yeah. Granted, they want to hear, I would say, more like classical, more trained work. But if you express it in your own way, like freestyling, if you express it in your own way, they're going to see your influences, they're going to feel your emotion. It's different from like, oh, you have to go on stage and perform, like you said, like Mozart or something on the cello. Then if you get on stage up here with us and we start tapping on our legs and beatboxing, and you pull out the cello and just start freestyling. Yeah. It's completely different. It's more engaged. It builds, I would like to think of like kind of like cognitive brain. So it builds muscle like in your brain. Like it's life, dude. Like when you do things that's freestyling, it's from the heart. It's not from like a piece of paper. You know, it's you. It's not doing Mozart. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. We have another one?
I loved that question, and I love Bobby McFerrin. Come on, let me hear it for Bobby McFerrin. I just sort of
Okay, there's a couple people that don't know who Bobby McFerrin is, so why don't you just go know?
Oh no, people. Okay, there's an NPR podcast.
That's why you have Google.
Krista Tippett on Being, interviewing Bobby McFerrin, super huge, classically trained musician who came into the world through the Episcopal religious life and became an amazing improvisational artist who goes all around the world to classical orchestras, classical dance groups, classical groups, and creates interactive audience experiences. I got some nods out there saying, yeah, Bobby. And he's just an amazing builder of communities. And I think that a fellow named Neil, who was on the panel earlier today, ended the panel with a great discussion about the arts as a way of building good citizenry. And I would like to encourage all the artists at all the universities and in every location to consider themselves as public educators of good citizenry and of community builders. And so now I want to get to my question. You guys kind of took me away on that improv thing. But my question is twofold. One is, how do we create those safe spaces for art to develop and bubble up within people? Not everybody feels safe experimenting with the gifts that were given to them and squelched by the competitive world we live in. So how do we create those safe spaces for people to move forward in their own art forms and gradually develop love for the arts and boldness and courage, which is part of becoming a good community leader? Okay, so safe space is number one. And number 2, and I'll make it short, Heliwanishi, Kikeyu Yamanani Hake, the Lenape people of Lenape-Hoking long to have a voice into their ancient homelands, Ahenta Wahinkiankwa. But we have no honor for the indigenous people of our region. The arts are not here of the Lenape people. They're not taught in the colleges, universities, or art venues anywhere in the Delaware Valley region outside of an archaeological dig. So I ask you to honor the arts of all people, to learn the land where you live. We need to understand the aquifer, the soil, the plants, the air, and the original people, 20,000 years of history here in the Delaware Valley region. And we haven't touched them today. So I ask you to create safe spaces for all indigenous people who've been oppressed by some government somewhere. Learn from the South African exchange that UDEL is doing and that Del State is doing. Learn from people that are honoring the indigenous people of their region. Send people out into the world from your art venues to honor more indigenous people and give the minorities opportunities. And again, Haliwanishi, thank you very much.
Thank you. And the safe, I'm going to set aside the second part of that, but on the safe spaces reaction.
I mean, at least to me, I would think, as far as like she was saying, the whole safe space thing, as far as like with art and having people being more engaged in it, I think it comes from inside, to be honest. You have to know and you have to understand that there's no real way to make art. It's not an instruction manual on how to create art. It's all about how you feel when you look at it. Art's supposed to invoke an emotion. It's not really supposed to be a clean-cut description of something. You look at it and then you come up with your own ideas like, oh, okay, this looks like such and such. You have to relate it back to yourself. It's not always like institutionalized. It's not always going to be perfect, clean cut. So I think once you realize that art is more or less an expression of self and there's no real right or wrong way to do it, then it'll be a safe place.
I feel like that's actually a contradiction, the being at art, having a space, safe space in art, because I feel like great art is taking you out of your comfort zone and making you uncomfortable.
Okay, another question? Man, we got them lined up.
Yes. I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to give like some background on how I feel about the question, then I'll ask it again just for reference. But can art be more involved with segmentation, which is just specifically targeting specific audience with a specific thing? Because TV, I believe, ever since they fragmented from the old TV where there's like 3 channels, now there's billions of channels, not billions, and now there's a bunch of these segmented channels that just target specific audience. Would art be able to do that and have it be effective and gain more popularity of it? Because specifically for me, I got into art because I had growing up, my passion was when I was a young child, like 3, 4 years old, I started playing video games, and that's all I did through growing up. And then video games turned into the specific culture. Like most of the games I played were Japanese made, and they have their own specific art, they have their own specific music, and now that is particularly all I go for, because my personal passion is that type of music, because the video games and stuff were segmented straight towards me. Would art be able to be segmented and have it be effective to raise popularity for art in general?
Can you repeat the question just one more time?
Yes, it's all right. I'm a little not very good with words, but can art effectively use segmentation to gain popularity? Yes, can art target specific audience to gain effectiveness? Like instead of having these already traditional like classical stuff and other specific things, is there a way where we can have, as TV is, like 2,000 or so different types of targeted specific art forms and stuff like that? Would it be effective?
I think that what you're saying, yeah, I think is very true because it is effective upon all of our generations as a whole, because there is something that we see that affects us, that we build our own art from. Basically, with gaming and stuff like that, you have different channels online to this day that host different web shows and different news networks that focus directly on gaming. Exactly. There are shows on TV right now that go directly for what that person is looking for, and I feel as though the only way it's going to be more effective is word of mouth. You have to tell the people that are just like wanting to know more about these things if you don't say nothing about it.
To answer your question, I feel like they already have. It's already started. Now, there are, like you were saying, the whole video game thing, there are channels, there are web shows, vlogs, and things like that that do touch bases on a lot of these different, I guess, forms of art. For example, like he was saying, like with the video game thing, there's a channel on TV called G4. They do reviews. See, you're laughing because you know it. There's G4 because they have reviews, they do news, and they give you backgrounds on the games and things of that nature. So there are different channels that you can go to get the information that you want. Same thing even with music, because music is a form of art. We have MTV, we have VH1 Soul, we have BET, MTV Jams, MTV, things like that. There are forms of, I guess, there are ways that we do show the art on TVs and stuff. So there are different forms of art on TV. It's just, I guess, it's not as popular. It's not as pushed as other things are, I would think.
Gurmeet, are we okay with two more questions here? Two more. Okay, this would be, and then we'll move on to our next panel.
So my question is about introducing art into education in a different way. Just because I think that when you look at art, it becomes this kind of boxed thing that people go, oh, well, I'm not making this thing look perfect, so I must be really bad at it. And they kind of stop and they just kind of see art as this like untouchable, amazing talent that only certain people have. And I just think that art kind of is in a lot of different subjects that we learn in school. Like in English classes, you could have like third graders write a book, but then also illustrate it and then have an emphasis on both of those sides. It's not just write a story and then draw a pretty picture. It's like, what are you actually drawing? And just kind of teaching people and integrating art into like other classes and kind of getting it from an early age where they understand that it's not like art's over there and then science is here and math is there. Like understanding that everything works.
There's definitely room for crossover especially in the earlier classrooms, in elementary classrooms. And I've actually worked with a group of arts organizations and one elementary school in Wilmington where we gave a creative workshop and taught the teachers who came how to use art in their different academics, and take a book like you just said and teach a song that goes with it and help them. At Warner Elementary, they have an art form for each of the grade levels, and Opera Delaware will come in and have the kids write an opera of their own and then perform it and make their costumes and make their sets. And each grade level has a different art form or an organization that they're working with. So that's one school that can serve as a model for some other schools, and we can kind of spread that around. I think it's really important for teachers to use the arts in creative ways and help students learn all sorts of things. It's not just about learning the art form, but about learning.
Hello. So my question goes like to what we were talking about earlier, where you're affecting youth through the arts, like exposing them really young in order for them to develop the passion for art when they're older. My question is, what do you do when the children didn't have that experience when they're younger, when they're like our age and older? How do you get those people involved into the arts when they never had it before? Because most of the conversations are talking about how get them when they're really young. I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity because my parents and my schools, but a lot of kids didn't. So like, how do you give opportunities for teenagers and adults? You always hear like, oh, I used to play that instrument, or I used to draw, and I had to stop because the funding, the program got cut, or things like that. So I know like my dad, he plays the piano, and I'm into music, so he gets excited and I learn a new piano thing, and I could teach him. So what do you do for the adults and the teenagers? And also, a lot of programs focus on teaching younger kids to learn art, but shouldn't there be programs for adults and teenagers to get involved? Because by the time you're older, there's nothing to support the passion you have for art. Because you're like, I have to go to work, I have to do this, I don't have time to express myself through art. I feel like the childhood like of passion for art, as you get older, it fades because you have so many responsibilities. So what can we do in order to keep the art passion going through all the way until you're older in your elderly days? So yeah.
Good
Anybody want to try that one?
Speaking specifically for myself, only because I didn't have the extremities of what other people might have had growing up, as far as art was. I had more of a drive to want to teach my own self how to get into the arts. I pushed my own self. So, like, I would say using more programs to be able to inform people of the different opportunities that they still have, especially when they come into college, and letting them know that these resources are still out there for you, that you're not too old or you're not too young to be able to learn art. You can learn art at any time. Art is always around you. It's never been missing. So if you decide to be able to want to pursue it, then I would say that will be more of a personal thing.
Let me follow up with that a little bit, because I think you made a great point. Very few people aren't exposed to art as children. Very, very few. They might not see it that way. They might not have internalized it the way that you did because of the, the family support that you got and the kinds of exposure that you got. But even if it's music and exclusively music, people hear music and people sing songs in school and are exposed to that in various ways. I think what you may be getting at more, though, is that they don't understand the value of that, of the impact it has on or can have on their life, about how it can be a form of communication, about how it can be a form of expression, about how it can help you grow more as an individual and make you a stronger and better person. That's a little trickier, I think, and I think that is harder to infuse in people. But I had a very similar experience. I did not have much formal exposure to art or the arts when I was growing up. But I came to appreciate the arts as, again, I talked about a little bit earlier, because I'm more interested in communication. I'm more interested in how people convey thoughts and ideas, particularly around politics, not Democrats versus Republicans, but sort of who gets what in society. And the arts is a very, very powerful tool in that. And way to go about that. And so that's kind of how I got into it. So I think people wander into it in different ways. But eventually, I think what we want to communicate, for whatever your reasons are, whatever these individual reasons are up here, that the arts have value that goes beyond, a catchy beat or a good show or, a nice piece of jewelry.
I think that about wraps it up.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys. Excellent job.
That was wonderful. Let's give a great hand. Thank you for the DSU students for their feedback. I think everybody up here did a great job of improv.
Improv, that's right.
And who gets this next?
I'm delighted that there's so many younger people here, which for me is, younger people is, almost everybody's younger than me now. It used to be that was saying something, but, at my age now, most of the world is younger than me, and I get that. I meant what I said a couple of minutes ago, though. We've, the arts in Delaware, I think, are making good progress. Not great progress, good progress. And I give us a solid B right now for how we've kind of gotten through the really, really bad recession that we've had, how we've come out of that, how arts organizations in Delaware have managed to survive, some have managed to grow a bit. But there's still just a ton of work to do. And I am always encouraged when I'm around high school and college-age kids, just how smart they are. I mean, they're so much smarter than we were. And I think that's a great thing. And I think it bodes well for our future. Our job is to, as is every older generation's job, is to pass on as much as we can in as good a shape as we can to the next generation. And I'm proud to work for a governor and be part of an administration that puts real value towards the arts, not just in more money, although I get that my role is to find more money. I get that. But beyond that, to lend the sort of moral support that the arts need. And you guys know as well as I, the economic impact, the job impact, all the things that are easily measured. But as some of these folks who are sitting up with me today exemplify very, very well. It's so much more than that, right? I mean, it's so much more in terms of their lives and their personal development and who they're and what they're going to be as adults, entering into the larger society that they'll enter into after they're done school. And that's a good thing. So I encourage you to keep up what you're doing and keep lobbying hard. And, I remind people, and I'll remind you again, that we're not going to be here forever. At least I'm not going to be here forever. And we're going to finish strong in the 2 years that I have left, or 2 years and 3 months, not that I'm counting, that I have left as the Secretary of State and the Governor has left in office. But somebody else is going to come in after us, and you need to work them hard when they do, and make sure they not only continue what we've been doing, but expand upon it. So I wish you well. Thank you again for having me today. I'm just so impressed by the young people we had today, and thanks again, Guillermina, for all your work. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Secretary Bullock and everybody that has been part of this. At this time, let's go to a short and sweet last panel. Let me invite those who are going to be part of that panel. At this time, I'm going to ask George Watson to come here to the stage. Also, Don Becker, and also Linda Pop. Let me introduce myself. I haven't done that at this point. My name is Guillermina Gonzalez, and I'm the Executive Director of the Delaware Arts Alliance. And let's get started. I know it's been a long day. We've been learning a lot, and we'll continue to do that. So stick to a last solid panel, and I hope we all learn a lot. Having said that, let me introduce briefly Donald Becker. Dr. Becker is chair of the Arts Department at the Delaware State University. He obtained his EDD in Educational Leadership with a concentration in curriculum and instruction in the fall of 2007. He finished his MFA at the University of Delaware in June 1986. Besides being a dedicated arts teacher, he has a passion for printmaking. Linda Pop. Linda is the Baltimore County Public Schools Visual Arts Coordinator with 173 schools, 285 arts teachers, and supporting over 108,000 students. She was in the classroom for 30 years, teaching at the middle and high school levels. Linda has served on the National Art Education Association Council as Secondary Division Director and Eastern Region Vice President. She has made numerous presentations at the national and state levels, focusing on secondary benchmarks, leadership, narrative, sculptures, and sequential artistic development. Linda has served many years on the Maryland Arts Education, let me change the paper here, Association Council. Her personal artwork is mixed media narrative sculpture, and she has shown her work in local and state galleries. Welcome, Linda. Dr., of course, very accomplished people here. Dr. George Watson. Dean Watson is the Dean of College of Arts and Sciences and a professor of physics at the University of Delaware. I think my beautiful friend Paul Wheatgraf introduced him very importantly as the personal embodiment of diversity in this arts world. As Dean of the largest college at UD, he's responsible for the leadership and administration of the arts, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences at UD. Performing and visual arts are critical elements of university life and our interactions with the community, and include theater, music, and art as departments with undergraduate and graduate offerings, along with dance as a relatively new minor course of study. The departments of art conservation and art history are highly regarded efforts in the humanities. George was founding director of the Institute for Transforming Undergraduates Education, created by UD to promote reform of undergraduate education through faculty development and course design. So the panel is about education. We've been following the conversations, and clearly many of those conversations lead to, so what's education got to do with it? Having introduced the panel, let me just go to initiate the discussion with them by saying and sharing with you that the Survey of Public Art Participation in the Arts, conducted by the National Endowment for the Arts, shares a decline in attendance across disciplines. The SPPA also indicates that arts education was the strongest predictor of almost all types of art participation. Having said that, let me open the discussion with the panel by asking that particular question. So, what's education got to do with it?
Me? Of course. Me? Okay. All right. What does education have to do with this? A lot. That's why we're all here. And one of the big things that I think make the arts, especially the visual arts, very strong in the state is the adoption that a lot of the school districts and a lot of the art teachers in the state have done to incorporate instruction not only within the classroom, but taking kids to various museums, to galleries, to the theater, to other places, venues that give them, the students, an opportunity, like the earlier panel said, starting really young with these students and get them to become incorporated as part of their instruction, going to these places and actually seeing artwork up close in person, going to a theater performance, going to the opera, going to musical venues. And I think that's one thing that makes the arts strong within this day and age. I think the other thing that needs to be addressed is the fact that a lot of the art teachers, especially the ones that are here today, are passionate and are dedicated to what it is that they believe in, and they instill that starting with the kindergarten kids all the way up until high school. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it doesn't take place across the whole state. it amazes me how when I see students at the university level have never been to the National Gallery of Art, and it's 2 hours away. Growing up in an isolated part in upstate New York, for me to go anywhere, it was like a 6-hour drive. When I came down to Delaware, I was just amazed at how many students don't take advantage of 2 hours either way. You end up in some of the largest venues of art in the world. And it should be something that should be part of everything that we do.
Right.
And then I'm going to hand it over to somebody else.
Yeah, let me talk to you, Linda, since your experience clearly speaks to that correlation in between arts education and what happens later in life. What's your take on that?
My take, especially later in life, it becomes part of who you are as an individual. The passions that are incorporated into you as a child resonate throughout your whole life. And I think more that is instilled in education at an early age, that's what's going to bring each generation into the arts even more so and make it stronger. And I think it's something that it should be part of how we as a society view the arts and how we embrace the arts and actually have it as part of our everyday lives.
There you go. Thank you, Don. Linda, your take on that. Yes, you can actually just grab the mic. This could be trouble giving me a microphone. I know. Going to my lounge act. First of all, I'd like to give a shout out to the art teachers that are here today from the Delaware Art Education Association. Yoo-hoo! They're in the classrooms doing it every day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I think it's our job as educators to make sure that we are facilitating all students, the whole child, all children, the whole child, that the arts are for them. I know my mother, I would have to bribe her with pizza to get her to go to the art museum with me, because she was totally intimidated by art. She didn't think it was for her. So I think as art educators, it's our job to help our students to understand that art is for them. They can be makers of art, they can be viewers, they can be appreciators, they can be consumers, but it touches all of us every single day. And we can celebrate that and we can enjoy it. I think when I'm the out-of-towner, I think when I was first asked to join, it was almost this negative, oh, there's so lack of participation, and what can we do? And I don't know, I'm seeing things improving myself. I hired 30 new art teachers this year. One of my goals before I retire is to have an arts integrated elementary school, totally arts integrated in my district. I think they're getting it. I think the administration is getting it. I think the classroom teachers have always gotten it. Right. They've understood that through the arts, we can touch every child in every subject. Every time I offer a workshop that's arts integrated, it's sold out, not like there's any price, but I mean, it's filled in an afternoon. And they want more of it. So they understand that it's through the arts that we can engage all children. And I think the administration is finally getting it. I don't see our staffing getting cut. I see our staffing increasing. I see our programs increasing. I see our teachers understanding that they have to be advocates for their program. We can't just celebrate student achievement. We have to educate the administration. We have to educate the parents. We have to educate the community about the importance of the arts. And it's not just the product, it's the process. It's the 21st century skills. I challenge all of the art teachers that are here to be able to articulate, why does art matter? You have to be able to sell your program. You have to be able to take it beyond the art product. And all the research is there. Business tells us that they want innovative thinking, they want creative problem solving. Well, hello, we're all over that, but we can't just do the finger snap anymore. We have to be able to articulate what is it that we're doing that addresses 21st century skills, that prepares our students to be the creative problem solvers, the innovators of the future. We need to be able to talk the edu-speak. We need to be able to speak the language of the audience, not just our language. So we have to take responsibility for that. I don't see a decrease in my participation. At our reception at the museum last year, we had 1,200 people in one afternoon. Okay, we're doing it. You know, the numbers that I was referring to is national research that was conducted that clearly indicates. I'm glad to hear that in your case that's not the case, which is refreshing to hear. But the numbers are clearly indicating a declining in arts participation. So that's a fact that is actually happening.
Oh, I'm not denying it. I'm just saying that there's something we can do about it.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Good point.
Well, I think all that idea of educating, that, you know, we have to educate the importance, the joy of attending. We have to make sure that art is available for all people, that they understand it's for them, that they can all learn from it, they can all appreciate it, that type of direction.
Let me go with George. In your case, George, you have, as dean of the largest college in UD, you constantly interact. Oh, am I too close to the mic? Is that better? You interact a lot with individuals that are maybe belong to the industry, different corporations, and the likes. You've heard them saying what they need and probably they are not actually getting. Could you please speak to that conversations and how that connects with the need of creative thinkers and the individuals that Linda is referring to? Is that actually happening? What is what you're hearing that they are telling you, and you bring that back to the university and perhaps explaining if that's one of the reasons why you got involved in the arts being so far away, in a way?
Thank you, Guillermo. That's a completely different question than I was prepared to answer.
I know.
The other two.
I know, but I think it's
Let me warm up to
important.
it by giving the answer to the question I thought you were going to ask.
Okay.
All right. Which was what do I see as the role of higher education in the arts? And I'll
Correct.
try to go through this very quickly because I was thinking of just three of our primary roles. One is in bringing students who are majoring in the arts, who want to learn performing and visual arts, the broadest educational experience that they can, and give them fantastic opportunities to make art and perform art with our faculty members and have a huge impact on the community. So that's one thing I think our role is, you know, how are we educating arts majors? Second role is that we also, Don and I, our programs serve to create the future teachers of arts. So we have a strong music education program, Don has art and others here. So the role of the higher ed institutions in creating future teachers of arts is a sound one, I think. The other is the general education experience of our students at comprehensive universities, is that we need to work hard to make sure that every student that passes through our gates, so to speak, have a strong interaction with the arts. We really are creating the patrons for all of the arts enterprises where our graduates go to work and establish their homes. And I think that's a very strong role that higher education institutions play in creating future patrons of the arts. Now, your question was, just repeat it one more time. Now that I got that out of my head, I can start to process.
I was just trying to get from you what is your sense and take in your conversations with industry individuals, corporations and the likes, and maybe institutions of different sort, that they are asking you for individuals with what Linda mentioned, creative thinkers. They need to have a different kind of workforce that is not necessarily being produced, sort of speak, in the current settings. And then I'm going to go back to Linda to kind of wrap around that section of the conversation. But most importantly, your experience talking to those who are giving jobs to individuals that have been educated through the system.
Yeah. I have some very close colleagues here that we've been working on processing one of those questions of what is the role of being creative, being innovative, being entrepreneurial. What role does that play among our graduates, and what's the importance of that? I mean, we work really hard to develop higher order skills in all of our students. Those involve communication, writing, critical thinking, working on diverse teams and the like. But increasingly we're seeing that what makes the difference is if students, the extent to which they learn to be creative or innovative, in addition to the analytical thinking and critical thinking skills and the ability to communicate well, those will make outstanding graduates out in the workforce. I think those are the general skills that future employers look for beyond the depth of the content mastery that you've gotten, whether you're an arts major or a physics major. Those are kind of universal skills that we need to develop in higher ed.
Right. And Linda, in your experience, you've been there, done that for quite some time, which is a fantastic thing. You are an educator at heart. And you have students that were with you at one point, you kept contact with, and they came back to you saying, listen, this is something you taught me that I learned there that was useful later in life. Can you refer maybe to those examples that were given to you? If so, in terms of, believe me, art education made a difference in me.
I have a strong connection with a lot of former students, which is wonderful. Of course, I'm always amazed when they tell me how much money they're making. I'm like, what? Did I make a bad career choice there? But anyway, right, and they're not all, obviously they're not all artists. I don't think our goal is to, pump out artists. It's great when teaching at the high school level, I did have many, many students go on and become practicing artists and art educators, and but most of them are in non-art fields. But it's that artistic process, when they are immersed in the artistic process, that they are totally involved in creative problem solving, critical thinking. And to me, the experience of a studio is a collaborative, because you're having those constant critiques, feedback back and forth, communication, you're talking about your artwork, you're reflecting, you're making artist statements. So all of those skills that are involved in what is needed in globally competitive students is happening, finger snap, in the art room every single day. And they get it. We are in the conceptual age now. All the information is out there. It's on our phones. Now, what are we going to do with it? And that's where the creative thinker and the innovator comes in, and that's what we're all about.
Excellent. Don, you were going to mention something a few minutes ago. Do you want to go back to that thought?
Couple things. One, you're talking about the students and how they integrate and then the art teachers within the community and going to these different venues. It also becomes a two-way street where the venues have to be a little bit more proactive in trying to incorporate the schools and the school districts and the students within the museums and the different theaters, productions, things of that nature. And it becomes, I think, a win-win for everybody where, as these venues become more active within the schools, those are the people that you're going to nurture for years to come, for decades. And something that I always thought was a really strong recruitment tool was the largest art school in the world right now is Savannah College of Art and Design. And what they did is they go out every year and they do these major programs with art teachers during the summer. And they do it for two reasons. One, bring the art teachers in, let them take a look at what we have to offer. But two, by having these art teachers come and be on their main campus in Savannah, Georgia, they also become a great recruiting tool. So once those teachers know what that program is like, that's where they send their students. And they do this religiously every year. And I just think that something as simple as that could be incorporated by the museums, all these different venues that are of the arts, if they started to become proactive in how they bring the art teachers into, or the music teachers, et cetera, within these venues, show them what they have to offer, give them chances to, test them out, so to speak. That's something that's going to last long-term, both with the teachers and the students that they're bringing into the system. It becomes, I think, a major recruitment tool for everybody. The other thing that I want to say, and it goes on to George's question you gave George, is Wall Street Journal did this great article last fall, and I cannot remember, I'm getting old, I can't remember the author of it, but he talked about how the arts are being embraced within the industries, especially Wall Street, and how the critical thinking skills that these people within the arts are bringing, they'll train them once they get there. They want people that know how to think on their own, and this is what most of the industry is looking for. The skill sets, that's something that can be trained. It's how people take the information that these places have to offer and go with it, and they're finding out that the arts are becoming more of where they're recruiting from than most of the other sciences. Sorry about that. But that's
No, that is actually
something
perfect.
and it was a great article, and something that I've actually shared with my dean, my provost, and as well as others, and I think it's something that we all know, we all take for granted, but I think now the industries are starting to realize what we knew all along. So.
Yeah, to that extent, well said, to that extent, Daniel Pink in his book, A Whole New Mind, probably you have read about that, and Linda is saying yes because she obviously has read that book. And he says that the future in the business context, more than anything else, belongs to those with a right-side mindset, which is creators, artists, empathizers, pattern recognizers, and meaning makers. That combination, meaning makers, got me going, I have to say. He believes that society is moving from the logical, linear, computer-based information age to a conceptual age. Can that happen without the arts? Let me go with George.
I think most of our advances come from collaborations. And I think to have strong, effective collaborations, you need a variety of perspectives and disciplines involved. And I think, any product that's being created to the market involves design. Most everything involves an element of design. Even a curriculum or a business plan is design. So I think that the elements that come out of deep experience with the arts contributes to that. And you will always, as Dawn mentioned, you always have a strong member of your collaboration that has an arts background, I believe.
There you go. Linda, your take on that. You were like, yes, that's it.
Yeah, like Yahoo. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I've been touting Daniel Pink's book for a number of years now. Why right-brainers will control the future. And, as he says, and I stole his line, the information is all out there. Now what are you going to do with it?
Right.
And I think, again, when students are involved in the artistic process, that's what the artistic process is. It's constant creative problem solving, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. And those are 21st century skills. That's what we need now.
Now, one of the conversations that got my attention was the fact that probably we need to rethink in terms of what participation means in the arts. Is it the same thing, participation in the arts, as attendance? Do we need to go beyond that concept? Do we need to stick to it? Where do we need to go? Because that equally applies, I see both on Dawn and George, in the sense that probably, are we teaching the right things? Or maybe we need to rethink the way we make people experience the arts?
Yeah. Well, I think about it in terms of exposure on a university campus. Students have to come into the theater to understand why a live performance of a play is different than a film, why coming to hear the orchestra is different than hearing it recorded on a CD. I mean, you have to be in this space to experience art, and if you haven't had that opportunity, you won't appreciate it as much. So I think that's one of our major responsibilities on every university campus, is to make sure each one of our students has an experience with the different forms of art that we can offer. That's part of the educational experience. I'll let others talk to the more
There you go. Let's go with
curricular
go, Linda,
exposures
yes.
to it.
Well, and I'll say the same thing is true for K through 12. We're very fortunate in Baltimore County Public Schools where we do have a sequential K through 12 program. And in addition to that, though, we have enrichment opportunities. I wrote down in my journal during one of the earlier discussions, partnerships. I think that's huge. Partnerships between the school systems and the museums, the school systems and the theater, the school systems and the symphony. It's a win-win for both. So I think partnerships are huge within the community.
And Dawn agrees or disagrees?
Well, I think there's another part to this that needs to be addressed is, participation, live participation becomes probably the ultimate way that we are able to bring the arts into, with different generations, from children all the way up to, seniors. But that's not always going to be the case where we can actually have an individual go someplace to see something. So I think there's technology that's able to address how we go have the object come to the viewer, so to speak, or the event come to the viewer. And I think that we are in the beginning stages of the next generation of how do we do that? How do we address those issues? How many people in the room know what Ocula is? Oh, two hands, thank you. It's a virtual reality headset. What just took place with Ocula this past week? They just got bought out. Big money. Who bought them? Google. Within 10 years, Ocula's technology is going to be able to take you and put you into a space where you are there. That's going to happen. And so it was funny that Khalil was up here saying, we're lazy. We just flip and we do this and we do that and we get it. At some point, we are going to be in the space doing something, participating, and actually being a part of the interaction that's going to take place. So I think that as we go forward with the arts, we have to think about how we are going to be able to do things like that. When I was at the Louvre 2 years ago, there was a team already there literally videoing everything or doing sections of it, and that's where they're going. So that people can now virtually go to the Louvre in certain areas and just start to look and see for themselves, even though they're sitting there in their chair or wherever they're going to be doing it from. So, I think that's something that's going to have to take place down the road for the arts to be able to go out into the community. We always expect the community to come to the arts. It's going to be, again, it's the
probably
two-way
need
street.
to go there instead of waiting for people to come. That's essentially the message. I'm conscious about the time. I know it's been a long day for many of you, so probably I'd like to keep on talking and asking questions. But probably it's too long if we continue doing that. So in any event, is there a question? Let me ask if you have a question. Go right ahead. Let me share the mic with you. How about that?
Nobody said anything about questions from students.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question directed towards you, Linda. And this question is, should curriculum on the high school level require every student to take an arts class? And if so, what if students do not want to take these arts classes. And,
Bad.
and
Did I want to take physics? No. Did I take algebra? Thank you.
and if you want to extend on that,
Oh, yeah, and Jim.
I wanted to extend this to Dean Watson and say, at the university level, we're focused on a major, you pick a major. I'm a music education major, so I'm taking so many credit hours towards a BM, Bachelor's in Music. And my question is, if I were a physics major, do you think that, being a liberal arts college, should I be required to take arts classes, even though I'm at a university where I'm focused on something? I'm focused on that one discipline.
I think my answer is yes.
And could you?
That's it. It cuts both ways. I mean, so we have, every area of importance at the university will say it's critically important that every student at the university study physics or mathematics, or everybody has to have a firm grounding in literature or communication. I think we are balancing that. The depth of a major, and the music education major is as restrictive as an engineering major in terms of the accreditation expectations, the methods courses you take, your performance, mastery of your instruments, student teaching. There's not a lot of curricular space for other things. So we recognize that some majors are designed for depth to the exclusion of breadth. But most of our liberal arts degrees have a lot of curricular space to study lots of different things. So I think what we're trying to do in the 4 years is to make sure the students find what they're passionate about. And we do some of that through our breadth requirements, which span arts, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences. Probably should cut my answer short there and turn to the one that you were posed.
Well, I mean, I think, we are looking at the whole child, whether that child is 20 or 6. We are educating the whole child, not just the physics part of that child or the music part of that child. I'm very fortunate in Maryland, we do have a high school graduation requirement that the student has a credit in fine arts before they graduate. And as a visual arts teacher, I loved the kid that came into art class because he hated it less than music, dance, or theater, and got them to go on and keep taking art classes because they realized, whoa, I can do this. I enjoy this. I'm learning a lot. Those are my favorite students. And I would hope that impacted that student for the rest of their lives.
There you go. You want to continue the, okay?
You bring up an interesting point, which...
They can't hear you. Why?
Thank you. I apologize to add a comment just because how you worded your answer. And that is, so we're talking about the arts here, which is excellent. So my question is every discipline of the arts in equal value? For example, is learning music equally important, no more, no less, than learning visual art? And if so, should we then require all students to be required to learn every discipline of the arts equally for a truly well-rounded education? Or can we say, you as the student, you get to pick what art discipline you study? And this can be for all of you, but that's the comment that I have. Thank you.
Comment?
Short answer or long answer? Yeah, short, really short. Yes. Now, you know what?
That's the answer, the short answer.
At a very early age, I think you kind of figure out what your strong suit is. You definitely do not want me to be singing anywhere, ever. So that's why I became a visual artist. Same thing with musical instruments. My mother would force me to try to take piano, and the piano teacher had a really long talk with her one day, and pretty much told her, it's a waste of your money, please don't bring him back here again. And I was fine with that, because I hated it. But, joking aside, do I think it's really important that especially at a high school level, that you take as much art as possible? Absolutely. There's enough studies done, and I don't want to go across the whole aspects of the arts, but certain aspects of the arts integrated within, especially the high school age, where studies show that, especially taking music, a musical instrument, really enhances the mathematical aspects of your brain. And so there's studies where, if kids took music and they did so much better in math, sciences, etc. And the visuals, it's not, the correlation is enough where there's not a significant change, but just the integration of the visuals within the high school level shows that you got to stay behind with that.
I'm gonna behave.
The visuals really, in the enhancement of all the arts within the high school realm. Put your hand down. Show. I know where she's going with this, and it's show that within the high school academics. See, I told you music is not my forte. Really show that as a whole, oh, because I'm next to her? All right. Show that the academics of that child or that student at the high school age is going to give you a higher correlation, GPA, et cetera. And just the fact that the student comes out of high school feeling more accomplished than without the arts, and there have been studies done where that actually shows that as well. So to me, personally, I think it should be something that should be incorporated within. Jokingly aside, I know Linda was going to probably bring up the whole issue with the visuals, but there have been enough studies done, especially at Yale and Harvard, that show that the visuals, there isn't that correlation, unfortunately. What were you going to say? Okay.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Let's try, it's gonna be short and sweet, quick. There you go. One more question, and then you guys stay there. I'm gonna close with a few comments because it's past 3, and I don't wanna keep you guys waiting for a longer time. Okay.
One of the things many of us are here for is outreach. How do we get our name out there? Gentlemen, both of you have built in your organizations the young people we're all trying to reach. I'm the vice president of a theater group. Almost everybody that when I go there on Sunday for the matinee will have hair the same color as mine. How do I get to your audience? I have tried emailing and phoning the arts department chairs and heads to no avail. It seems like a logical, to me, collaboration. We should be working together, not ignoring each other.
Yeah,
How do I do that?
yeah. A quick thought. I mean, students may be busier even than we are at work. I think the way that we often fill our performance venues is to invite the students to perform or make the art. That brings parents, that brings their friends. So invite the students into your performance spaces and your exhibition spaces. I think that will attract. Okay, I hear you, and there are people in the auditorium that hear that as well, who can influence this.
You emailed me? Well, that's why I'm the chair. Okay. I would start with the grade schools. Like I said earlier, you want to recruit, go to the grade and high schools, because those are the people that you want to nurture and bring up. The other thing is, you know, wherever you are located, trying to get my students off campus, I got to bus them. So if I'm going to take a group of students anywhere, and I'm going to be in charge of taking those students, I have to be able to coordinate that to be able to get them to that venue. Most of my students are on campus. They don't have cars. They don't have ways to get around. So that's something that there's going to be a timeline and a coordination to be able to do something of that nature. And I say that across all the teachers and sitting in here still. It's something that it takes a great deal of time, effort, and money to be able to do something of that nature, especially on a Sunday.
Well, that's part of the idea of these kind of programs, to begin instilling that collaboration that is very much needed. With that, let's give them a big round of applause for a fantastic participation. Linda, George, done many thanks. Few closing remarks, if you stay with me for a couple of seconds, maybe 3. Let me begin by thanking again our wonderful host, Donald Becker, Delaware State University, the University of Delaware, and the Delaware Art Education Association for this fantastic day. Delaware Arts Lab, the Arts Lab, how we call it, it's a program was inspired by both Maryland Citizens for the Arts and also Art Pride New Jersey. I'm not going to steal the idea from wonderful colleagues that have been there, done that. John Schratweiser was here for a great deal of the day. He just left, I believe. I want to thank them, both of them, for their support and inspiration. Today was, believe it or not, an Arts Advocacy Day. Arts advocacy takes the shape in occasions of this kind of thought-provoking conversations. It's not about just lobbying, which is important. It's important to bring money to the table, but it's also important to instill the change in the minds of individuals that are making decisions out there. That's part of the deal. So we're going to continue doing that in many different ways. Hope this day has inspired you to become an arts advocate. For us to instill the change we need and want, we need to have a unified voice, and for that, we need you as members of DAA, because we are the Arts Alliance, meaning the force is with those who really make the case in a unified way. Isolated efforts, I've been always saying, are very heroic, very nice, and always can make good things. But nothing makes the change better than the unified voice of the arts in different arenas. So hope you can become a member of DAA. It's free for individuals. Let me just say that what began with 120 individuals at the beginning of the year is now close to 600 members and counting. And that, my friends, is not because we're sexy, and I know that people are going to look at me and say, well, there you go, she goes again with the sexy stuff. The reality is that, which is nothing wrong with being sexy, but the point is that we need those voices to really instill the change, and particularly young voices. Being here has a purpose. Having you guys, the young audiences, the future patrons of the arts, is even more important. You are the future of arts advocacy and the future patrons of the arts. Without you, what we do does not make any kind of sense. Finally, in thanking for your presence today, I would like you to get your input and feedback. The Arts Lab is coming back in the next 2 years, bigger and better, and for that, we need to have your ideas. There's surveys at the end in that table over there, I believe, and if there are some DAA members over there, I'm going to ask them to pass around those surveys. So please take the time to give us your feedback, because if we're going to come back bigger and better, is because you provide those ideas. With that, let me close. Thank you again, and hope to see you here in the next 2 years.
Make an announcement. Before you leave, please make sure that this place has no remnants of lunch.
I wasn't supposed to let you guys eat in